the steel tides roar, engines.
Welcome back, folks. I'm Fred McMurray here with Vice President of Business Development, Eric Trout of Harbor Freight Transport, and we're talking about how Harbor Freight Transport can help. Today's topic is the top 3 questions to like to know about the Harbor Freight Logistics brokerage. Welcome, Eric. How are we doing today?
Doing great. Extremely busy. With us just getting our Class 3 customs bond at our Savannah facility, the rate requests have been coming in hot and heavy. So that's a good sign for us, right? It's good.
Congratulations on that. We actually did the last episode with Steve Liberty Jr. on that because the news was really hot. So felt like a real big scoop there to have it happen when it came in. All right.
Yeah, I would imagine depending, the next couple coming months, it's going to be a hot topic for sure. Absolutely.
I believe it, especially with all the wonderful things going on with international trade. So
Exactly.
let's talk Harbor Freight logistics brokerage. What
Yeah.
modes of transport does Harbor Freight Transport cover?
Well, that's a great question, Fred, because kind of people always recognize Harbor Freight Transport as the heavy haul, out of gauge, flat rack type transload and warehouse provider. A lot of people don't know that we do run our own assets, and we've got multiple pieces of equipment, or when I say multiple pieces of equipment, multiple types of equipment to uh, run all kinds of freight. We also have a less than truckload city delivery operation that covers all of the 5 boroughs, 100% of Long Island. Those are 26-foot straight trucks with lift gates. They're all hazmat certified. So we can do LTL deliveries into and out of the city and the 5 boroughs. We also do airport pickups. Um, but in terms of modes, I'd say the only modes we really don't cover um, as a forte is small parcel, and we really don't get into box car. We do domestic intermodal, which I'll talk about, but when you look at the modes that we cover, I would say specialized heavy haul on our assets, as well as we have a stable of asset based carriers who regularly pick up from our facilities for the specialized moves. These carriers, as well as Harbor, we utilize the special equipment, double drops, mini decks, triaxle, RGNs, to move this over dimensional, heavy machinery, high value type products. So we do have a great stable of carriers as well as Harbor's own assets to manage those types of moves. Um, we also do regular dry van freight, 53-foot tractor trailer, whether it's palletized or carton freight, floor loaded carton freight. We do a lot of retail apparel transloads, and we will manage that outbound trucking to the DCs from our warehouse to the client's DCs. And those are mostly moved in outbound dry vans, or what they're called. Um, we also have direct contacts with less than truckload carriers. So for your smaller size shipments, we can manage one pallet up to volume size shipments, which is a volume LTL shipment is technically 5 pallets or greater, where they'll give you a spot move just to fill capacity. So we do that as well. And then more recently, we have direct contacts or tracks with Union Pacific for their door-to-door domestic intermodal program, as well as the Norfolk Southern with their door-to-door domestic intermodal programs. If you're not familiar with domestic intermodal, it is a 53-foot container, um, COFC, container on flat car, versus you picking up the cargo in a regular trailer. This will pick up in one of those 53-foot containers. The driver will then take it to the local rail ramp. That container will be taken off of that chassis and placed onto a flat car, and they do stack trains. So that's where you see the trains with the two trailers stacked on top. And those are it's a really good outlet for our customers who are looking for a value play. You sacrifice a little bit of transit time. It's typically 2 to 3 days longer than a regular truck to deliver, but in certain lanes that are very good for the railroad, you get a very nice discount on your transportation rates. Savings generally in a couple $100 per move. So that's a recent capability that Harbor has been utilizing quite frequently, for our customers.
All right. So, so, uh, what I kind of heard, at least in the last part, in the first part, I heard you handle everything, but really two types of small, basically small stuff. You guys,
Right.
you don't do that. That's better going UPS. Maybe not, but they're who I think about.
Yeah.
When I look at the other stuff, not only is it, from what you said, not only is it what the transportation assets you have, Harbor Freight has recently, and I say recently because that's kind of the word you used, developed agreements with Norfolk Southern, and you said another rail. So literally somebody could ship something in to Savannah. You guys can get it to the railroad, and they can get it all across the U.S.
Correct. Yeah, yeah. Domestic intermodal it's a great opportunity, especially when you have large volumes of shipments coming in, because the capacity, regular trucking capacity. Let's say you have 30 loads coming in at one time. It's difficult to find 30 individual drivers, or it could be difficult to find 30 individual drivers. Domestic intermodal, what that enables you to do is it's a short haul move. So capacity is really it's a lot easier to manage because they're local moves where they're just going to pick up this domestic 53-foot rail equipment from a local yard. They can load multiples a day and deliver it to the rail because it's a short haul move. And then once it's on the rail, on that rail schedule, the railroad will truck it or will rail it across the US. Yeah, not truck
Yeah,
it.
well, you don't want to say truck it, but yeah,
No, no.
that to me, as we'll say a bystander, that sounds like a phenomenal thing. If I'm shipping something from overseas and I'm in quantity, that just seems to simplify things. Of get it to you, you guys get it on the train, and it gets out to the distribution centers that it needs to go to, without a whole lot of, because if you got to rent 30 drivers, that's 30 points of failure.
Right, right.
Uh,
It's we would have to transload that cargo out of the ocean container and then put it into the domestic 53 intermodal container and ship it. But yes, it is a great tool to have in your back pocket to use. Again, it's a value play. It's a little longer transit time. It can be depending on the lanes. And the rail schedules have historically been fairly predictable, right? You do get weather derailments, things like that, but the railroads are very, very proactive in educating, the users here's a delay, etc. Right? And so if we're doing our job correctly, we're communicating that effectively to our clients.
Yeah, I used to rent a house near a uh, train train track, and 10:30 every night you heard that thing going through rain, shine, or blizzard. So, um,
Yeah. Yeah.
so I guess when I look at this, it's kind of like you become one throat to choke. Because in my IT career, it was always people wanted, they didn't care what, they just wanted to fix. And if it wasn't working, they wanted one person throat to choke.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. And I'd have to say the other added benefit to it is if you're an importer coming into the U.S. and you have a transload program, you're going to have a drayage rate component. You're going to have the transload rate component, and then you're going to have the outbound trucking, right? And so by having Harbor Freight Logistics manage all of those aspects for you, you as a provider, you only get one invoice, right? You're not going to get three different invoices for the port drayage, for the transload, as well as the outbound trucking, right? We become essentially a domestic control tower, or as you quite adequately said, one throat to choke. Let's hope we're not getting choked, right? Let's hope we're doing our jobs, right?
Well, I usually find when somebody steps up to, and accepts the responsibility to be that throat to choke, very,
Yeah,
very seldom does it happen because they ensure they're not getting choked. At least that
right.
was in my IT and marketing career. All right, so
Yeah.
let's move to the next topic. Um,
Mhm.
there's been, especially with recently, I've noticed with Canada and the US and trade issues. Um, does Harbor handle moving uh, cargo cross border to Canada and Mexico?
100%. Yeah, we do imports and exports cross border to Canada and Mexico on a daily basis. Um, we and again that's the over dimensional, that's the heavy haul, very technical type moves. We manage those on a daily basis, as well as just the general regular cargo, whether that's a full truckload or less than truckload. We've got the capability, and with our network of carriers, we've got 100% coverage of both US and Mexico, which certain, especially doing business in Mexico, certain carriers only go with what's within what's called the Golden Triangle: Monterrey, Mexico City, over to San Luis Potosi. That's where the major manufacturing is. But with our network, we've got 100% coverage for both full truckload as well as less than truckload shipments into both Canada and Mexico. So on a daily basis, yeah, we manage cross border, out of our warehouses every day.
So you mentioned in Mexico, you move cargo outside the, we'll call it the gold. You said the Golden Triangle. Um,
Correct.
so Canada does. So with that, it sounds like you'll move cargo all across Mexico. Now that's warm and nice and never sees snow. Do you move cargo all across Canada, even into those places that are frozen tundra places that no sane person really wants to go to?
Yeah, we do, Fred. That's that the oil fields, the places of manufacturing that are receiving that heavy equipment, our carriers have to go there, regardless. So yeah, we're doing shipments, into and out of Halifax, Nova Scotia. We're going, over into British Columbia, into those areas, Saskatchewan, you name it, whatever the customer needs, with our stable of carriers, we can get the product shipped out of our warehouses effectively and delivered to all areas.
So do the trucks that are going up into the crappy snowy parts of Canada, do they charge more than the ones who are going down to Mexico? Uh,
That's a different, yeah, that's a different dynamic between head haul markets and backhaul markets.
All right, we'll go
So
into the topic in a later episode.
yeah. But
All right, so then the last question I've got, since we're talking about cross-border transportation, you get cargo into your bonded warehouses and you ship that cargo out. Um, m- the way I understand things now is once that cargo moves out, if it's going in the US, then um, it's no longer bonded. In But does that same thing happen if I'm shipping it from, say, the bonded warehouse in Savannah up into Edmonton, Alberta?
so if cargo comes in to, let's say, our Savannah, Georgia warehouse, right, which is bonded, and it's going to go into Canada or Mexico, we're going to move that out of the port on a PTT, a permit to transfer. That's basically moving it under our bond out of the port into our bonded warehouse facilities. Because it's going to go into Canada or Mexico, you don't want those products to enter into the US commerce. So you're going to move it in bond out of that warehouse on a T&E, the 7512 T&E is the customs document. And you're moving it on that trucker's bond to pick up from a bonded warehouse, and they're going to move it to the border. So it's never going to enter into the US commerce. Once it crosses the border in either Canada or Mexico, that's when the client will pay the customs duties and entry fees into that respective country. So the products never really get into US commerce. If you are going to bring the products into the US and import into the US and then they stay within the US, you can do an entry which then enters the products into US commerce, and then any trucker can do it. We also do a lot of shipping and transloads into clients who are designated as free trade zones. A lot of retail apparel companies are designated free trade zones. So in that case, you really don't want to enter the products into commerce at the time when you bring it in through the port. So we would do the port drayage and the transload in bond, and then we would put it on a bonded US trucker to move it from our bonded location to that free trade zone. Once the products go into that free trade zone, they can sit there indefinitely, and they're not going to pay duties and taxes on it until they bring it out for consumption. So that's how the US is kind of handled. And we do a lot of that in particular for retail apparel companies.
All right, so I got two answers there. I want to make sure I got them. So somebody ships stuff into your bonded warehouse from overseas. If it's going over to Canada or Mexico, it doesn't want to come out of bond because that means they're going to have to pay the fees and all that stuff for the
Yeah,
US, only to pay the Canada or Mexico fees also. If I
yeah. You would have to do essentially if you brought it into the US for commerce, you would have a customs entry into the US. But then when you ship it into Mexico or Canada, you're basically going to have to do another entry out of the US into Canada or Mexico, right? So you don't want to file customs twice on it. So
I, I
that
was
allows us to do it.
I was thinking that's
Yeah,
so the way you do it. So you will ship it bonded to either Canada or Mexico, and that's when the fees are paid, which means it's a lot. I'm going to say it's cheaper, quicker, and less paperwork to do it that way
yeah,
than you were to quote as you put it, enter it into U.S. commerce. Now,
yeah,
the other thing you talked about was where Harbor Freight can help is the fact that if it's coming into the U.S. and going to stay in the U.S., you can pick it up at, we'll say, Savannah, ship it to Amazon. I'm assuming they've got a free trade zone. Amazon's free trade zone where the stuff will sit there until it's ready to be entered into the U.S. Uh, uh, economy, and that's when fees and duties are paid.
Correct. Yeah. I'm not sure if Amazon has an FTZ, but yeah, clients that are set up as free trade zones, yes, they will use that as a strategy, to bring the products in, and then they can put it in their free trade zone distribution center. And once they enter that product into the free trade zone, the products can sit there until they decide to draw it out of that free trade zone. And at that point in time, that's when they pay. So, you know, slower moving items, seasonal goods, let's say Halloween right now. If
Christmas.
you're a free trade, yeah, Christmas, if you're a free trade zone client and you have your own free trade zone established, in the interior of the US, that would be a good strategy to do, right? Versus bringing it in, customs clearing, and then moving it.
So in other words, if I'm shipping snow blowers in, it's because we're waiting for winter. If I want to ship them in early, this way it keeps the duties and stuff being paid until the free trade zones ships them out. So much better.
Correct. Yeah.
Sounds like that's realistically 4 different ways Harbor Freight Logistics can help.
Yeah, absolutely. Again, people think of us as the out of gauge heavy haul type, machinery and flat rack transloader. But the reality of it is we can also manage that quote unquote final mile delivery out of our warehouses, out of our transload facilities to the final delivery destination. And there's a lot of benefits for Harbor doing that, versus piecemealing it out to multiple parties. So, yeah, one throat to choke, or as I'll call it, a domestic control tower.
Yeah, but you got to admit that phrase "one throat to choke." It lets
Yeah,
people know what the benefit there.
yeah, absolutely.
All right. Before we sign off, any other comments you want to tell our listeners or watchers?
Appreciate if you're an existing client, we appreciate the support. If you're a new prospective client, just want to let you guys know Harbor Freight, we are a third generation family owned company. Very little bureaucracy, no red tape. We do what we say. And, we've got 78 years of proven track record to be able to manage your goods and manage your supply chain. So,
And yet you don't look 78. Just kidding. Just kidding.
yeah. Yeah.
Folks, we'll be back next week with actually I think we'll be back next week with Steve Liberty Sr. First time he'll have been spotted on camera in quite a while, to talk about the last 50 years before you got here. Thanks, folks.
Awesome.
We'll be back again next week. Thank you, Eric.
Thank you.